What if the most powerful economic revolution in Africa was not hidden beneath the ground, but growing quietly in the fields? For generations, Burkina Faso watched millions of tons of cotton leave its borders. The harvest was African. The hard work was African, but the greatest profits were made somewhere else. Raw cotton crossed oceans, entered foreign factories, and returned to global markets as finished clothing worth many times its original value. It was a cycle that many believed would never change. But today, something different is beginning to take shape. While many advanced economies are adjusting to trade uncertainty, rising production costs, and shifting global supply chains, Burkina Faso is pursuing a different path. Together with Mali and Niger, the country is exploring a future where cotton is no longer just exported as a raw commodity, but transformed into higher value products closer to home. If that vision succeeds, it could reshape jobs, investment, and confidence across parts of West Africa. Yet this story is about far more than textiles. It is about dignity. It is about economic choice. And it is about whether one of Africa's oldest exports can become the foundation of one of its newest industries. Stay with us until the end, because the most surprising part of this story is not the $4.2 billion textile alliance itself. It is the reaction that such a transformation could trigger far beyond Africa. If you enjoy thoughtful analysis on Burkina Faso, Africa, and the changing global economy, subscribe now and join our community. Because the biggest question is no longer whether Burkina Faso can grow cotton. It is whether the world is ready for Burkina Faso to keep its value at home. For decades, cotton has been one of Burkina Faso's most valuable agricultural resources. Every growing season, thousands of farming families worked under intense heat, preparing the land, planting seeds, protecting crops, and harvesting cotton by hand. It was demanding work that required patience, experience, and resilience. Yet despite producing one of the region's most important export crops, many farming communities saw only a small share of the wealth created from their labor. The reason was not the quality of the cotton. The real issue was where the value was created. Once harvested, raw cotton was compressed into large bales and shipped overseas. There, it entered spinning mills, textile factories, and clothing manufacturers. Every step after harvesting, from turning cotton into thread, thread into fabric, and fabric into finished garments, added more value. Those stages generated skilled jobs, industrial investment, technology, and higher profits. Most of those opportunities existed far from the fields where the cotton had first grown. For many African farmers, this pattern became part of everyday life. They grew the resource. Others built the industry. Imagine an experienced cotton farmer named Issa, living in a small village outside Bobo-Dioulasso. For more than 30 years, he planted the same fields his father once cultivated. Every harvest brought hope, but every selling season brought the same uncertainty. Global prices changed. Transportation costs increased. Weather remained unpredictable. Even after months of hard work, the final income often depended on decisions made thousands of miles away. One evening, Issa watched his youngest son prepare to leave for the capital city in search of work. There were no textile factories nearby, no industrial parks, no clothing manufacturers waiting to hire young workers. Like many families, they believed that opportunity could only be found somewhere else. That story has been repeated across many farming communities for generations. But what if the problem was never African agriculture? What if the real challenge was exporting opportunity before it could create prosperity at home? That question has become increasingly important as Burkina Faso, together with Mali and Niger, explores ways to strengthen regional manufacturing and expand local value-added industries. Supporters believe that processing more agricultural products within the region could create jobs, improve industrial capacity, and reduce dependence on exporting raw materials alone. While the long-term results remain to be seen, the discussion itself represents an important shift in economic thinking. Instead of asking how much cotton can be exported, a new generation is beginning to ask, how much value can stay inside Africa? That single change in perspective may prove more important than any harvest, because once people begin to see cotton not simply as a crop, but as the beginning of an entire industrial chain, everything starts to look different. Farmers become suppliers to factories. Young people become skilled workers. Small businesses become part of a larger manufacturing ecosystem. A single field can support far more than one season's income. But turning that vision into reality would require far more than good intentions. It would require investment, factories, training, regional cooperation, and above all, the courage to challenge an economic model that had existed for generations. So how did Burkina Faso decide to take that first step? The answer began not in the cotton fields, but inside a bold new vision for Africa's industrial future. For many years, people believed Burkina Faso had only two choices: keep exporting raw cotton, or risk losing international buyers. But a different idea slowly began to take shape. Instead of asking how to grow more cotton, leaders, entrepreneurs, engineers, and farmers began asking a far more important question: why should the most valuable part of the business happen somewhere else? That single question changed the entire conversation. The vision was no longer centered on producing larger harvests. It was centered on building an industrial future. Instead of watching ships carry away millions of dollars in raw materials every season, Burkina Faso began discussing how more of that value could remain inside the country. Cotton could become thread. Thread could become fabric. Fabric could become uniforms, clothing, industrial textiles, and products carrying the label "Made in Burkina Faso." It was a completely different way of thinking, not simply exporting a harvest, but exporting craftsmanship, not simply selling a crop, but selling an industry. That vision became even more significant as cooperation between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger continued to deepen. Together, the three countries possess millions of hectares of agricultural land, a young workforce, and growing ambitions to strengthen regional manufacturing. Many supporters see cooperation as a way to reduce dependence on imported finished goods while creating more opportunities within the region. For ordinary citizens, those discussions sounded different from political speeches of the past. People were no longer hearing only about production targets. They were hearing about factories, training centers, industrial parks, technical schools, small businesses, supply chains, and thousands of future jobs. Imagine a young woman named Amina. Her parents spent decades growing cotton. Every harvest disappeared beyond the horizon on long trucks heading toward distant ports. As a child, she assumed that was simply how the world worked. Cotton left. Opportunity left with it. But today, Amina is studying industrial textile production. She dreams of working inside a spinning mill, only a few hours from the same fields where her parents still farm. For the first time, her family's future may depend not only on the success of a harvest, but on the success of an entire national industry. That is a profound psychological change. Because when young people begin believing they can build successful careers without leaving home, communities begin changing from the inside. Local restaurants serve more workers. Transportation companies expand. Machine repair businesses grow. Construction firms receive new contracts. Banks finance new equipment. One factory supports dozens of other businesses. An entire economic ecosystem begins forming around a single crop. That is why economists often say manufacturing multiplies opportunity. Every additional step in the value chain creates another layer of income, another layer of skills, and another layer of resilience. Supporters of Burkina Faso's industrial strategy argue that this is not simply about producing textiles. It is about changing the direction of economic development. Instead of exporting jobs, they hope to export finished products. Instead of relying primarily on commodity prices, they hope to compete through productivity, quality, and regional cooperation. Across villages and cities alike, that message has begun to resonate. Many African citizens are asking a new question. If cotton can stay in Africa, why not cocoa? Why not shea butter? Why not leather? Why not processed foods? Why not machinery assembled by African workers? One successful industry could inspire another, and another after that. Gradually, confidence begins replacing resignation. The conversation shifts from surviving to building, from dependence to capability, from waiting to creating. Perhaps the most remarkable transformation is not happening inside the factories. It is happening inside people's minds. For generations, many believed Africa's role was to supply raw materials. Now, an increasing number of young entrepreneurs believe Africa can also build globally competitive industries. That belief may become one of the continent's most valuable resources. But every major economic transformation creates new questions. If Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger succeed in keeping more of their cotton value inside Africa, who stands to lose the most? And how might the world's established textile supply chains respond if West Africa begins moving beyond raw exports and into manufacturing? Those questions lead us to the next chapter of this story, because the ripple effects of this strategy may extend far beyond the cotton fields of Burkina Faso and into boardrooms, factories, and trading hubs across Europe and beyond. For decades, the global cotton business followed a familiar pattern. Many African countries exported raw cotton. Many foreign manufacturers transformed that cotton into products worth many times more. It became one of the world's most established industrial supply chains. Every participant understood their role. Farmers harvested, exporters shipped, factories manufactured, retailers sold. Consumers rarely stopped to ask where the journey had actually begun, but every long-standing system eventually faces a moment of change. And for many observers, Burkina Faso's growing ambition to expand domestic textile manufacturing represents one of those moments. The reason is surprisingly simple. The real value of cotton has never been created at the farm gate. It has always been created after the harvest. The spinning, the weaving, the dyeing, the cutting, the sewing, the branding, the distribution. Every one of those steps creates jobs. Every one of those steps creates new businesses. Every one of those steps keeps more wealth inside the economy where they happen. For generations, much of that value was created outside the countries where the cotton was grown. Now imagine something different. Imagine that instead of exporting $1 million worth of raw cotton, Burkina Faso gradually exports finished textiles, finished uniforms, hospital fabrics, industrial materials, school clothing, military garments, professional workwear. Each shipment carries far more value than raw fiber alone. The trucks leaving Burkina Faso may look similar, but economically, they tell two completely different stories. One truck exports a harvest. The other exports knowledge, skills, engineering, manufacturing, employment. That difference changes everything. Across West Africa, entrepreneurs are beginning to notice these possibilities. Small textile workshops are expanding. Vocational schools are introducing new technical programs. Young engineers are exploring machinery that previous generations never imagined operating at home. Banks are beginning to study manufacturing projects instead of looking only at agricultural production. Investors are asking new questions. Not, how much cotton can Burkina Faso grow? But, how much value can Burkina Faso create? That change in thinking may become one of the country's greatest economic assets. Because confidence attracts investment, investment creates factories. Factories create skilled workers. Skilled workers create innovation. Innovation creates industries that no longer depend entirely on exporting raw materials. For many Africans, this is about far more than economics. It is about dignity. It is about finally participating in every stage of production instead of only the first. It is about ensuring that the next generation inherits factories alongside farms. Imagine Issa again, the farmer we met earlier. Years ago, he watched trucks carry away raw cotton. Today, he watches another truck leave. But this one is different. Inside are finished uniforms produced by young workers from nearby communities. His daughter helped inspect the fabric. His nephew maintains the production machines. His neighbor operates the delivery company. His village is no longer connected to cotton through farming alone. It is connected through industry. That is what a value chain looks like when it begins to grow at home. Across the region, conversations are changing. People are speaking less about aid and more about investment, less about dependence and more about production, less about exporting possibilities and more about building them. Supporters of regional industrialization believe this approach could encourage stronger trade within Africa itself, particularly as regional economic integration expands. If neighboring countries increasingly purchase textiles, uniforms, processed agricultural goods, and manufactured products from one another, more economic activity remains within the continent before reaching global markets. That possibility has attracted attention far beyond West Africa. Not because one factory changes the global economy overnight. It does not. But because ideas spread faster than factories, if one textile cluster succeeds, others may follow. If Burkina Faso demonstrates that more value can remain inside Africa, other agricultural economies may begin asking the same question. What if cocoa stayed home? What if coffee stayed home? What if lithium batteries were assembled closer to the mines? What if Africa became known not only for its resources, but also for its industries? That is the conversation many economists are beginning to watch. Because once countries begin moving higher along the value chain, global competition changes. Supply chains evolve. Investment flows shift. Business strategies adapt. The question is no longer whether Africa can grow the raw materials the world needs. Everyone already knows it can. The new question is whether Africa will increasingly manufacture more of the products the world buys. And if that happens, how will established manufacturing powers respond? Will they compete? Will they invest? Will they build new partnerships? Or will an entirely new chapter of global trade begin to unfold? Because while cotton may be the first thread in this story, it may not be the last one that reshapes the economic map of Africa and the wider world. History has a remarkable way of repeating itself. Every major industrial transformation begins with a simple question: who creates the value? Not who owns the raw materials, not who grows the crops, but who transforms them into products the world cannot live without? Today, that question is being asked on both sides of the Atlantic. The United States is working through a new era of economic competition. Manufacturers are adapting to changing trade relationships, rising production costs, supply chain disruptions, and growing efforts to strengthen domestic industries. Businesses are rethinking where products should be made, how critical materials should be sourced, and how economic resilience can be improved in an increasingly uncertain world. Across Europe, similar conversations are taking place. Companies are looking for reliable suppliers. Governments are discussing industrial competitiveness. Manufacturers are searching for ways to reduce risk while keeping production efficient. At the very same time, a quieter transformation is unfolding across parts of Africa. Instead of asking how to export more raw materials, an increasing number of African policymakers, entrepreneurs, and young innovators are asking how to create more value before those materials ever leave the continent. That difference may define the next generation of economic development. For decades, Africa supplied many of the resources that fueled global industries. Now, many Africans hope to participate more fully in the industries themselves. This is why Burkina Faso's textile ambitions matter beyond cotton. They represent a broader conversation about economic participation. Imagine a university student in Ouagadougou studying industrial engineering. 20 years ago, graduation might have meant searching for opportunities overseas. Today, that same student may imagine building a career inside an expanding manufacturing sector at home. Imagine a young entrepreneur in Bamako designing clothing made entirely from regional cotton. Imagine logistics companies in Niamey connecting producers with customers across West Africa. These are not simply business ideas. They are signs of a changing mindset. Across the continent, many young Africans no longer ask only how to find employment. They ask how to build companies, how to create brands, how to compete internationally. That confidence may become Africa's most valuable export. Supporters of deeper regional cooperation believe organizations such as the African Continental Free Trade Area could gradually make these ambitions more achievable by reducing barriers to trade, encouraging investment, and expanding markets for African-made products. If regional industries continue growing, manufacturers may increasingly buy cotton from neighboring countries, process it within Africa, and sell finished goods both across the continent and abroad. That creates something every economy values: resilience. Because countries that produce, process, manufacture, and innovate are often better positioned to respond when global markets become unpredictable. This is not a contest between America and Africa, nor is it a story about one region replacing another. The global economy has always evolved through new participants, new technologies, and new partnerships. The real question is whether Africa is entering a new chapter as a stronger industrial partner rather than primarily a supplier of raw materials. If that happens, the opportunities could extend far beyond textiles. Food processing, agricultural equipment, renewable energy components, construction materials, digital manufacturing. One successful industry often encourages another, and another after that. Perhaps that is why many international observers are paying closer attention to what is happening in Burkina Faso today. Not because one textile initiative will change the world overnight, but because history shows that major economic transformations often begin quietly: a single factory, a single policy, a single generation willing to think differently. And then, the momentum becomes difficult to ignore. So, perhaps the most important question is no longer whether Africa can industrialize. The more important question is this: if Burkina Faso proves that more value can remain inside Africa, which nation will be brave enough to follow next? Every generation reaches a moment when it must decide whether to continue following an old path or build a new one. For Burkina Faso, that moment may be closer than many people realize. The vision of transforming cotton into finished products is inspiring, but inspiration alone will never build an industry. Factories require investment. Machines require maintenance. Workers require training. Businesses require reliable electricity, transportation, financing, and stable institutions. Every successful manufacturing nation has faced these challenges. Burkina Faso will be no different. The road ahead will not be easy. Global competition is intense. Established textile producers have decades of experience, advanced technology, and well-developed international supply chains. Winning a place in that market will demand consistent quality, competitive pricing, and the confidence of customers around the world. The outcome is not guaranteed, but neither is failure. History reminds us that today's leading industrial economies were once developing producers themselves. They expanded step by step, investing in people, infrastructure, and innovation over many years. The same principle applies here. If Burkina Faso, together with its regional partners, continues investing in education, industrial skills, and value-added production, each new factory could become the foundation for broader economic growth. If those efforts slow or lose momentum, the opportunity to capture more value from local resources could remain unrealized. Ultimately, the future will depend not only on government policy, but also on entrepreneurs willing to invest, engineers willing to innovate, workers willing to learn new skills, and consumers willing to support products made closer to home. Perhaps that is the greatest lesson of this story. Natural resources can create opportunity, but people create prosperity. A cotton field can produce a harvest. A factory can produce an economy. And a generation with confidence can change the future of an entire nation. So, when historians look back on this period, will they say Burkina Faso simply continued exporting raw cotton? Or will they remember this as the moment the country began building a stronger manufacturing future? The answer has not been written yet. It will be shaped by the decisions made today. If you found this analysis valuable, please subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you never miss our in-depth coverage of Africa's changing economic landscape. We would also love to hear your perspective. Do you believe Burkina Faso can become a major textile manufacturing hub in the years ahead? Or do you think the biggest challenges are still to come? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay informed, stay curious, and keep looking beyond the headlines. May Africa continue to unlock the full potential of its people, its industries, and its future.